All right, welcome back to Off the Bench with Thom Brennaman. Brian Billick has long been considered one of the greatest offensive minds in the history of football. After putting up and leading the team with record-setting numbers as offensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings back in the late 90s, he became head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. In only his second year, Brian Billick led Baltimore to victory in Super Bowl 35. He won 85 games during his tenure, lost only 67. Including 6-3 in the playoffs, and had a great run at it in Baltimore. He later became Fox's #2 analyst. He was my partner in the TV booth in a career that lasted on television for nearly 15 years. Now he's an offensive analyst to Herm Edwards for Arizona State football and our NFL guru on Off the Bench. Brian Billick, welcome. It is so great to see your face and to hear your voice. What exactly does an offensive analyst do?
It's very important. I bring donuts and coffee in the morning. I make sure that there's enough pencils and pens. And no, this was kind of an offshoot when Herm Edwards and Ray Anderson, who's the AD here at Arizona State, approached me. Marvin Lewis is doing the same thing on the defensive side. What they had going here, basically, it's more about coaching coaches. It's about the process. There's a limitation, although I get to work with the players on a mentoring basis, which is great. I love being around the young people. But it's more about the structure of the process and helping the coaches in terms of formulating game plans, practice structure, that kind of. So it's not heavy lifting for me. Allows me to get back on the golf course a little bit as well. But it's been fun to get back in it, be around it, certainly be around the coaches and try to help them wherever I can as they get ready for the season.
Have you missed coaching?
You know, there's elements of it, Tom, certainly do. I miss coaching. I miss doing the broadcasts with you, you know, being close to the game. But I don't miss the grind and being back around it now, all on a somewhat limited basis that I am now, and recognizing, as you know, this is a grind. This is a 24/7 tough jobs. Never have a lot of hours. I get that. But the coaching world, when you're living it like I did, you don't think of it because it's just what you do. But now, having gone away, come back and seeing it again and immersing myself in it in a limited way, boy, it is a grind. And I'm a little past that right now. I'm enjoying the time that I do have, but I enjoy interacting with it now.
Let's talk the National Football League for a minute. And you have studied quarterbacks. You've written a book about this, about scouting quarterbacks, watching quarterbacks. Has quarterback play ever been better than it is right now in the NFL? Because there's such a really good-looking group of young quarterbacks, especially in the AFC.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you 100%, Tom. I can't remember a time over the last few years in particular when we still had Drew Brees in the league. I don't know when Tom Brady's ever going to leave. But I can't remember a time when we had so many future Hall of Famers. Now, obviously, some of the young guys and the Patrick Mahomes and the like, we'll have to wait and see. Certainly, they're showing great promise that way if they careers. But I'm talking about the bona fide Hall of Famers from Brady, Breeze, the Mannings, Rodgers. Roethlisberger, I think, is clearly in that list. So I agree with you. I don't think we've been as deep in good quarterback play. And as you know, when you sit and you kind of handicap going into the season who are going to be the good teams, what you're really saying is, okay, who has the best quarterbacks?
Yeah.
Because rarely you're going to say, okay, this team is good enough to win it all if they don't have that kind of dynamic play at quarterback. But I agree. I think that's what brings so much equity in the league right now. There are certainly some teams, but because of the good quarterback play, I think it's a wide open field on both the NFC and the AFC in terms of who could end up in the Super Bowl.
Joe Burrow, what do you like about him, and how do you compare him to some of the other top quarterbacks right now in the NFL?
Joe Burrow has a calm about him that is belied by his youth. Even when he came in, now I understand he came out of LSU, and that's a major program that he's used to the pressure. But even the most pressured programs in college football, it's different when you come into the NFL. And Joe Burrow, the athletic is in what he's able to do. His athletic in the pocket, he can get outside and do some things. He's not one of these runaround guys that's going to really kill you with his legs, but more like an Aaron Rodgers, is so good in the pocket and just outside the pocket, has a calm about him. I think Cincinnati obviously knows they've got to wrap some additional assets around him, but he is clearly one of the really good young quarterbacks, whether it's Mahomes, whether it's Allen, Lamar Jackson, guys that we need a little more tincture of time, but have greatness written all over them.
Brian, you hear the term in sports, the it factor, quite a bit, right? And I'm curious, all your years, whether it was as a player, and look, you had a cup of coffee in the NFL, a couple of training camps as a receiver, but as a head coach, do you see the it factor while they're in college? Do you see it at a combine? Do you get it in the interviews at a combine? Or does a guy truly have to walk into your locker room and you watch him on the practice field every single day to determine if he truly has the quote-unquote it factor?
Yeah, all of the above, but until he gets into that locker room, you really can't be sure. It's like we wrote in the book, The Q Factor, in analyzing quarterbacks. And we've talked about it for a long time, Tom. Even with all the resources and the analytics and everything that we have available to us now, taking a first-round quarterback in the NFL is a 50-50 proposition at best, and it ought not to be. But that it factor is a major part of why so often we miss. But there are guys, there's clearly the way they carry themselves. Tom, I remember when you and I were doing a playoff game when Seattle was playing Atlanta.
Yep.
And we had a young Russell Wilson come in. Now, Russell Wilson was a third-round pick, and we didn't know that much about, although he had a really, really good rookie year. When he walked in that room, I remember when he left, you and I both looked at one another and said, that guy's got it.
Yeah.
There was a presence about that young man that was, again, like we talked about with Joe Burrow, was belied youth, that there was just, you could tell he understood it. He got it. Bill Walsh always used a term, and you hear it all the time. Bill Walsh always felt like by the middle of the second season, about the 25th or 26th game, you knew if a guy had it or not. Now, it might happen before then, and we've seen that with the Patrick Mahomes and the like. But if he doesn't have it, he hasn't shown it by then, it's probably not there. And so you hear quarterbacks all the time that go on and do well. At some point they say, well, the game has slowed down for me. Well, we know the game's never slows down. This is a fast, violent game. But what it is they're beginning to see things more clearly. And therefore, it seems like it's slowing down. Their decision-making process has refined itself. And the guys with the it factor are the ones that the game slows down and they just see things differently than maybe you and I might see. Even me as a coach, standing behind and watching the really good quarterbacks throw the ball in places where you go, where were you going? And yet it's complete because he knows where he can get it. He knows where the hole in the defense. He has the it factor. It slows the game down. He sees it, and it translates to the way the players interact with him.
All right, the Arizona State Sun Devil logo is in there in the background. You're getting ready for the season opener this weekend. How are the Sun Devils looking?
You know what? I think we're going to surprise some people. You know, with all the things that have gone on here, with off and on and the like, and with the advent of the portal, this is new to me.
Yeah.
I'm old school. This is a whole new world. And when I came in and the players, and it's great that they play that kind of versatility, and I appreciate that there's a lot of money out there that's flowing for some players. I don't particularly like it. I don't know that it's good for college football. I think it needs to be regulated and refined, but that is where it is right now. And I will tell you this, with all that happens in the portal and players coming and going, you know, it's kind of funny. And, you know, you go to practice every day and it's kind of like, are you okay? You good? You're not going anywhere, right? I mean, it's almost it was easier in the NFL. But I will tell you this, we're a better football team today, and I think we're going to be a pretty good football team than we were, say, on February 1st, and had no way of knowing that based on the transition of players coming and going and how they come in. And it's a different world right now. And like I said, I'm not sure I like it. I think I really appreciate more what Mike Krzyzewski said after he retired after the last NCAA game, when he said, we got to get this under control. So something's got to change here, and he had the gravitas to do so. The presidents and the heads of the NCAA or the athletic directors, this can be a good thing, but it needs to be looked at in a long, hard way.
Oh, I want to ask you just two more questions. Being out there in Arizona State, and when the news broke about USC and UCLA going into the Big Ten, I don't know if that came as a shocker to any of you sitting there in Tempe, Arizona, but the repercussions of this thing and what's going to take place moving forward in the Pac-12, you have any feel for that at all?
Yeah, I know. I think it shocked everybody, including the ADs and the presidents around the Pac-12, which, I'm just a lowly slappy down here. Not that I would know anything, but I think they were surprised by it. And whether it goes right, part and parcel with what I'm talking about. We are clearly heading towards super conferences. NFL model, they're talking about certain teams leaving the NCAA. It's above my pay grade, but I can see us having competing like AFC, NFC, probably 15, 16 teams in each, which means there's going to be a lot of filtering out. USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten, it just doesn't feel right. And they could say, great, the Big Ten is going to be one of these super conferences. Well, no, it's not, because at the end of the day, if it is under that moniker, then where do the teams like Minnesota, Northwestern, Indiana, I'll say even an Iowa or a Michigan State, certainly an Ohio State, a Michigan, maybe a Penn State will be in those conversations, but those programs are going to have to decide, do we want to be a part of that? Do we want to pay to be a part of that? Are we going to get involved with that? Which means, again, via the NIL money and whatever, you got to rally the boosters. You've got to have a war chest to where you can go get these players, because that's what life in college football and those super conferences is going to be about. So, there's a lot left to be done. SC and UCLA feel like they're heading towards that. Maybe they belong. That SC's gone out and bought a hell of a football team.
Yep.
So they're going to be good this year. UCLA, we'll see. But then the question is, can a UCLA, which is a fine program, I'm a California guy, I've always been a big UCLA fan, but they're drawing, 30,000 fans a game? I mean, can they really compete, or do they want to compete in that? Is that where they're heading? So there's a lot of shoes left to drop in this. Where are we heading, and what are those conferences going to look like?
All right, last question I have for you, because you and I have stayed in contact all these many years, even though we stopped working together a few years back. But I got to ask you, I heard you were an outstanding play caller for your grandson's football team, but you tell me now they've let you go from that position. What in the hell happened?
Yeah, they looked back at my record probably and looked. No, it was great fun being involved, and it was the first 2 years that my grandson got into organized tackle football, which is such an incredible time to young people and the learning. There's so many great lessons to be learned on the football field, but it's a challenge. It's not intuitive to hit people that way, even boys, that you got to get used to it and how you carry yourself. And there's so many lessons, but I'll share a story with you. I'm out there and trying to figure out how I'm going to help these young men. And then one young man comes up and he says, head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. I said, yes, sir, I was. You know your stuff. He says, and you won a Super Bowl. I said, yes, sir, I did. I said, you've studied up on this. He goes, that's really cool, because most of those guys are dead. So, I don't know if he thought I was Vince Lombardi or what, but so it's interesting for these young people and the way they process it and who they follow and all that. It was great fun. It's been great fun to watch them now too.
Well, my friend, thank you so much for the time today. Look forward to being with you and getting your expertise the entire season. So great to see you, my man. Have a great rest of the day, and enjoy the kickoff with Arizona State this weekend. We're excited for you.
We'll do it, partner.
All right, Brian, thanks so much for your time. We look forward to having you with us each and every Monday. And keep that in mind now, okay? Because every Monday, after a full slate of games in the National Football League, and I can promise you Brian Billick is watching every single one of those games or tuned into every single one of those games, and he'll be able to break it down. And the great thing about having him on now, as opposed to when he and I were both doing games for Fox or he's working for the NFL Network or whoever it is, he's not beholden to anybody anymore, right? So if some guy's great, we can say he's great. If some guy stinks, we can say he stinks. And hopefully we don't have to say that a lot. Nobody likes doing that. But Brian Billick with us every single Monday to talk about what just happened in the National Football League. Back in a moment.